man is tied inside a blue van. His face is covered with a leather bag and a radio transmission plays in the background. The reporter goes over an incident happening in Shinjuku where a middle-aged man took several employees hostage. Meanwhile, the man in the van reaches for his phone. With the little mobility that he can afford in this situation, he writes a text message. "I've been deceived, Alpha." But the man is distracted by a knocking coming from outside. The man gazes at the van's windows. His vision is blurry at first, but once he gets a clearer view, he identifies the source of the knocking. It's a girl. She keeps knocking at the window. She screams at the man when suddenly what I just described was the intro cutscene of the game 428 Shibuya Scramble, a scene that hooks the player from the very beginning, as many mysteries are set up in such a small period of time. Who is the man in the van? How did he end up in this situation? Who is the girl calling after him? Even long after finishing the game, I still think about this intro cutscene and how intriguing and exciting it was to start playing the game. 428 is a one-in-a-million experience. This game feels so real. The more I think about this game and the more I learn about it, the more fascinating it is to me. Rarely I feel this way about a game, and for that reason I believe this game deserves recognition. As such, in this video, I'll go over one of the most special games I have ever played, one with a well-constructed narrative, and one that elevated its genre to a greater high. This is 428 Shibuya Scramble. "428 is a visual novel originally released on December 4, 2008 for the Nintendo Wii, which will later be ported to other platforms. This game tells the story of 5 individuals that are involved in a conspiracy surrounding the kidnapping of the daughter of one of Japan's most prestigious medical researchers. The game follows a branching structure with a flowchart, similar to other visual novels like the Zero Escape trilogy. But interesting enough, 428 shares the same developers as Zero Escape, Spike Chunsoft. And as a matter of fact, 428 predates the very first Zero Escape game. Another element that was first introduced in 428 that was later seen in the Zero Escape series was a narrative that was told through multiple perspectives. Throughout 428, we experienced the events of the game in the eyes of 5 individuals, but we first start the game with just 2 of them. Shinya Kano, a detective from the Shibuya Police Department who is tasked with saving the researcher's daughter and unmask the mastermind behind the kidnapping, and Achi Endo, an ex-gang member who spends most of his time cleaning the city of Shibuya. Despite both characters having no relationship whatsoever at first, the events of the story lead them to the same place, the Shibuya Scramble crossing, where the police is conducting a stakeout operation using the kidnapped girl's sister, Hitomi Osawa. And it's here where we see the main gimmick of 428. But before I explain the gimmick, let me go over something. The visual novel genre is quite niche, because at first glance it seems like all you do in visual novels is reading. And technically that is true. Compared to other game genres, the player's interaction with the game is way more limited. There are no technical mechanics that the player must master. Most of the time there is no direct interaction within the player and the game's world. It's just text boxes. Not that different from reading a novel or comic. So the biggest question has always been if visual novels are truly video games. And the answer to that question depends heavily on your definition of what a video game is. Compared to other forms of entertainment, video games are relatively new, and the medium keeps constantly evolving. But if you ask me, I do think visual novels are video games, because they still allow players to interact with the game through role-playing. One of the biggest strengths of the genre compared to other story-focused genres is how visual novels put more effort into writing narratives that are more interesting than your average video game, but they also give a level of freedom to the player to shape the story as they like through decision making. A lot of visual novels will give player choices in how they would like the story to unfold. Some decisions will lead to positive outcomes, while others might lead to disastrous events. The fun of reading a visual novel is that it uses the medium of video games to tell stories in an unconventional way that cannot be replicated in other mediums that seamlessly, as branching narratives in visual novels feel natural and engaging due to the nature of video games as a medium. And 428 has my favorite implementation of a branching narrative that I have seen in a visual novel, as the player will be constantly presented with decisions throughout the game that will alter the outcome of the story, with some decisions moving the plot forward while others leading to bad ends. However, 428 plays with this idea in a really interesting way. As mentioned before, the story is told through the perspective of multiple characters, with each character having their own set of decisions, with every decision not only affecting the outcome of that character's story, but also the outcome of another character's story. This makes for a really interesting narrative because it connects every character arc into one big narrative. Each character goes through their own self-contained stories, but at multiple points they will collide with the story of another character. Just take a look at the beginning of the game. While Achi walks around the Shibuya Scramble, he notices that a girl is in danger, and the player is given the choice of whether Achi should get involved in the situation or not, which not only affects Achi's arc, but it also interferes with Kano's story, as now Achi, which at this point in the game seemed like another pedestrian around the scramble, is now a major player in the stakeout operation. And throughout the game, there will be multiple instances where one of the characters will take a decision that alters the fate of another character. It adds a level of complexity to the story and to the decision-making process, because now the player must think how their decision could lead to the best outcome of multiple characters at once. And sometimes there will be decisions that might seem irrelevant to one character, but that might be extremely important to another one. My favorite part about this branching system is how the story is moving forward at all times, because every decision matters, and there is not only one character moving the plot forward, but multiple ones, and each one of them feels important on their own way. Branching structures can get confusing and convoluted when not done properly, but 428 is a story that excels at telling its story through the lens of multiple characters. Even though all of them have distinct personalities, motivations, relationships, and goals, the game slowly presents information to the player on how all of them end up being involved in the kidnap conspiracy. Some characters are involved due to their family, some characters are involved due to their job, and some characters end up just being there for mere coincidence. And this complex narrative works so well because it's like a butterfly effect. Every action has a consequence. The narrative does not focus on only one character, but instead it's every small decision taken by multiple characters that lead the story forward. Now, one of the most unique aspects of this game is its visuals. In visual novels, art is a really important aspect of the game, as one of the few elements that separates a visual novel from other forms of reading is how this genre uses visual elements to complement the storytelling. Most Japanese visual novels tend to have an anime art style or a variation of it. However, 428 is an odd one at that, because instead of relying on a conventional art style, it uses live action shots and videos, which results in a visual presentation that is not only unconventional for visual novels, but for any genre of games. Yet, this presentation is also one of his biggest strengths. 428 uses a common technique in other visual novels called cutscene graphics, or CGs, which is an image that showcases a special event or scene. Throughout most of the game, the narrative is told with a text box and a CG in the background, but the CGs in this game are some of my favorite ones in any visual novel due to their unique style, creative compositions, and amazing facial expressions. Every CG in this game tells so much information from just one image. Without any text, you can tell how the characters feel due to the great acting. You can tell the mood of a scene from the lighting and color palettes, and it's quite surprising how varied and creative the CGs in this game are. Rarely, you get to see two CGs that look alike, and each one of them has a purpose. Every CG has something important to tell. 428 works around the limitation of its genre to showcase some of the best visuals I have ever seen in a game, and it's done mostly through still images. Rarely, the game throws a flashy cutscene at the player, but with such a limited format, the visuals are delightful. But 428's visuals are not entirely unique to it, as this game is actually an evolution of another Spike Chunsoft game, Machi. This is a Sega Saturn game released in 1998, which shares a lot of similarities to 428, from its branching story with multiple characters, the setting of Shibuya, to the live action stills for its CGs. As a matter of fact, one of Machi's producer, Koichi Nakamura, was also the producer for 428. Machi was the pioneer of many of the things that make 428 what it is, and 428 recognizes that legacy and improves upon it to make the definitive visual novel experience. Now, I would like to go over one of the strongest aspects in 428's writing, and that is its characters. 428 has one of the best casts of characters that I have ever seen. Let's start with the two characters I have mentioned so far, Kano and Achi. Shinya Kano is portrayed by the actor Kosei Amano, who is well known for his role in the tokusatsu show Kamen Rider Blade, playing the role of Kamen Rider Garen, or better known as Kano is involved in the plot not only because the stakeout operation was part of his job as a detective, but also because he is a character with a strong sense of justice that originates from the teachings from his mentor. But this character also struggles with balancing his job with his personal life, giving him a duty to protect others that is not only born from his profession, but also from the desire of protecting those who he loves. Kano is in a way your typical golden heart hero. What I like the most about this character is how his ideals are challenged throughout the game, reaching a point where Kano even questions if his mentor's teachings are right or wrong. And this idealism of doing the right thing is also seen within Achi's character. Endo Achi is portrayed by the actor Yuto Nakamura. This character gets involved in the plot during the events of a stakeout, where he runs away with Hitomi until they notice that they are being chased by one of the detectives involved in the stakeout. Now, Achi's goal is to protect Hitomi from a mysterious pursuer. Achi is also a character with a strong sense of justice, and while he had a past as a gang member, his gang was actually formed with the idea of protecting the safety of Shibuya. However, the gang changed drastically, becoming a vigilante group which forced Achi to leave. Both Kano and Achi share an idea of justice that is challenged throughout the game, and the characters on their own are great as they both undergo a lot of growth throughout the story, taking their initial ideas about justice and shaping them into more profound ones. But these characters are further complemented by their relationships, with Kano's sense of duty not only being influenced by his mentor but also by his partner, Yuji Sasayama. And later on, it is also influenced by an American officer that joins the kidnapping case, Jack Stanley. And in the case of Achi, His relationship with Hitomi heavily influenced his actions throughout the story, as not only he protects Hitomi because he knows it is the right thing to do, but he also feels romantically attracted to her. And these are just some of the relationships that these characters have. There's also Kano's fiancé and father-in-law, which makes him doubt about pursuing a career as a detective, or Achi's sister, who suffers from a heart condition and serves as the main motivation behind Achi's desire to help others in Shibuya. And what I have told you so far is just a fraction of this character's arc. There is so much more to them. And the most surprising thing is that these are just 2 of the 5 playable characters. After finishing the first chapter of the game, 3 new characters are unlocked. The first being Minoru Minorikawa, portrayed by the actor Fumio Kitagami. He's a journalist who is tasked on writing pages for a magazine issue to save his former boss from some loan sharks. The second character is Tama, portrayed by the actress Yumi Sumimoto. She's a girl in a cat costume who is suffering from amnesia and takes on an advertising job to buy a necklace. And for the third character, I'm not gonna go over them just yet. But let's get back to Minorikawa and Tama for a second. These 2 characters are interesting because at first they're not involved with the kidnapping case at all. And it's not like Achi where he gets involved early on. Instead, Minorikawa and Tama arcs feel more self-contained, as throughout a great portion of the game they are not directly related to the main conflict of the story. Or at least, that's what the game might make you think at first, as the narrative does a great job foreshadowing many future events subtly, which are later reincorporated into the main plot naturally. And it's during these 2 routes where 428 shows another of its strengths, and that's how the story handles world building. It's through Minorikawa and Tama's route that we get to see 428's interpretation of Shibuya, as both characters' journeys are connected to the residents of Shibuya, as Minorikawa meets and interviews several individuals to gather stories for the magazine issue. During this job, Minorikawa comes across many bizarre events that may appear as disconnected from one another. On the other hand, Tama is thrown into a sketchy advertising campaign without any memories of her past, with her only driving force being a necklace that caught her attention. The version of Shibuya in 428 is one of my favorite takes on that setting, as the city is characterized mainly by its residents, with every corner of Shibuya being home to an eccentric individual. It's reminiscent of stories like Twin Peaks or Diamond is Unbreakable, where minor characters are extremely weird, as if they came out of a fever dream. And while some of these characters are not essential to the main conflict of the story, their existence gives a better understanding of the setting. And 428 has a lot of minor characters that, despite not being major players in the story, they are still strange, memorable, and funny. One of my favorite ones is Junichi Yanagichita, portrayed by Tomoaki Hamatsu, or better known by his alias Nasubi. Yes, the same Nasubi from the reality show Susunu Denpa Shonen, the same guy that was challenged to enter sweepstakes until he reached 1,000,000 yens while the entire challenge was broadcast on TV. That same guy portrayed a character in 428, and it's the funniest character in the game, as he plays the role of Tama's boss, where he runs an advertising campaign for an energy drink that allegedly helps you lose weight. Yanagichita is a character that takes the most advantage of the live action stills for the CGs, as every single CG involved in this character is a masterpiece in comedy. Nasubi's facial expressions are some of the best acting that this game has to offer, portraying exaggerated and hilarious faces throughout multiple CGs. And it's not only about funny faces, his body language was really well done too. From just a few still images, you can tell a lot about his character, and you can tell that the actor was having a great time. This character is so much fun to see around, and he steals the scene every time he shows up. And the game does not only use this character for comic relief. The game actually expands upon his relationship with Tama, and there's some emotional scenes between them, which ended up making him sort of a tragic character. Even though he does some really shady things throughout the advertising campaign, he's not a bad person at heart, but he ended up in a really tight spot. And just like Yanagishita, there are other minor characters that add so much to the story, like Yoshio Kajiwara, who is a detective with a lot of weird mannerisms. He reminds me of Furuhata Saburo in the way he interrogates people and reads their mind. Funnily enough, he is described as the Japanese Columbo in-game. This is another character with a lot of weird and funny scenes, but it ends up complementing the development of the main characters. Or Miku Monita, who is a boxer that at one point in the story ends up fighting Tama. Or even Kanon's partner Sasayama, whose main gimmick as a detective is cosplaying different characters. And I could keep going on and on about the minor characters. There's so many of them and each one is weirder than the previous one. Their inclusion in the story helps sell the credibility of the setting as a real place, and it adds an unpredictable aura to the city of Shibuya. Like, you never know what kind of people or situation will go on in this city. And having so many different types of individuals helps shifting the mood constantly depending on the situation. The story overall has a light-hearted tone, but it's also a story that will make you feel in so many different ways. The game can be funny, it can be intriguing, it can be tense, it can be exciting, and it can even be scary. Fortune is not exactly a horror game. However, it uses elements from that genre in a few instances. The way horror is portrayed in this game is subtle. It is seen only within one of the character's arc. Yet, this character is the best written character in the game, and his story is one of my favorite ones in all of gaming. I would like to talk about the fifth playable character, Keiji Osawa. Portrayed by Takuyi Oyama, Keiji is a pharmaceutical researcher and the father of the kidnapped girl Maria Osawa and her sister Hitomi Osawa. As part of the stakeout operation, the police have been working alongside Keiji and his wife to rescue Maria. However, in this situation, Keiji is both defenseless and stressed out. There's nothing he can really do but stay in his room, where he locks himself to listen to the pop artist Ayaka Miki, and goes on fan forums discussing her music. A form of escapism that he has developed to avoid the stress of the situation that he found himself in, but also a way to escape his sins. An escape that seems futile, as not long after, he receives an email blackmailing him about a virus that he was researching, as a picture of a patient with large red blotches covering his face and large volumes of blood coming out of his ear and nostrils shows up on Keiji's screen. More pictures of the patients with the virus show up. Keiji knows what kind of virus this is. A virus with a 100% mortality rate. Then Keiji receives a new email with the subject, "1 year ago, South Africa," with a message saying, "Your crimes." This is the introduction of Keiji Osawa's route in the game. A huge contrast in tone compared to the introductions of any of the other characters. And it's not only the introduction, but the entire route is way different than the other ones, as the tone is more tense, depressive, and even terrifying at times. There are clearly funny moments thrown from time to time, but they're heavily toned down. Keiji is a character that deals with complex topics, dealing with escapism as a form of disconnection from the stress of your daily life, regrets of not enjoying life enough due to prioritizing work, anxiety of not seeing your loved ones again, and the horrors of a biological weapon capable of ending humanity. When we play as the other characters, we get to explore Shibuya and the people that inhabit this city. But for Keiji, we're trapped in his house, where his only companions are the detectives, his wife, and his partner. But as tension escalates, Keiji isolates more and more from the few people that are around him. He starts doubting who are really his allies, or whether he has any allies in the first place. He's incapable of trusting anybody as he slowly drowns in despair. But there's still something that brings him hope. Aya Kamiki's music. Keiji is a reserved person. He's not the most talkative person around. Even when he interacts with his wife, he comes off as cold and detached. Yet, if there is a place where Keiji is the most expressive, is in Aya Kamiki's fan forum, where he constantly shows his support for the artist. One of my favorite scenes is that one where the forum discusses the possibility of Aya Kamiki expanding her reach outside of Japan, and Keiji stating that even if Aya fails to connect with the international market, her local fans will still be there to support her. This scene showcases who Keiji really is. He's not an inhumane and emotionless person as he appears in front of others. He's a caring person, but he doesn't feel like he belongs in the world where he lives in. Keiji is a wealthy and powerful person, being among the leads in the Japanese pharmaceutical community. Yet, he does not feel satisfied with his life. A life filled with regrets of not enjoying enough time with his daughters due to his job. It's only within the fan forums that he feels in a safe place. A place where he can be himself. Keiji's personal conflict is one of my favorite ones in fiction, as it explored topics that resonate with me. In many visual novels, you don't get to see a perspective like this, because most main characters tend to be teenagers or young adults. But Keiji's arc is an oddity, even within 428, because it fits all of these topics within a greater narrative. And what I have said so far about Keiji is just scratching the surface. There's still so much more to this character, and I will not spoil it in this video, because I would love that people that haven't played the game get to discover these things on their own. 428 is a masterpiece in storytelling. Every small arc connects to each other. Even more disconnected characters end up being connected to the overall plot in one way or another. It is a story that doesn't feel like anything is wasted. Every single plot point and character has a purpose, and it's incredible how such a big story is split into so many smaller pieces without feeling messy or overwhelming. At the moment of recording this video, the game is available on PC through Steam and the PS4, with a really good localization directed by David Cracker. David Cracker stated that his favorite type of Japanese games have a certain sensibility that you don't find in Western titles, adding that 428 is the most Japanese game in that sense. So when he joined Spike Chunsoft, one of his goals was to localize the game to English, which took a bit of convincing until the project was eventually greenlighted. Once that happened, many of the challenges of the localization involved translating jokes from Japanese to English to keep the idea of the joke in translation while also still being funny, but also adapt certain direction tricks into English, like the effect that occurs when characters scream, where the font size is blown up. The localization of 428 is one that was handled with a lot of care and love from the team. But the development team behind 428 is also one that was passionate about this project. As explained before, Machi served as the base for 428, as Machi was developed during the transition period between the Super Famicom and the Sega Saturn, where the team noticed how a lot of developers were attracted to FMV-based games. However, the console was not powerful enough to make Machi into a full FMV-based game, so instead, Nakamura opted for an alternative, which was sound novels with live action elements, with the main priority of the team being delivering a game that presented text and images in a pleasant way. At the time, there were no digital cameras widely available, so the team opted to shoot pictures using film, where they would take actors and make them pose, creating shots that would look like manga panels, which ended up becoming a more laborious task than recording FMV, because they will have to work shot by shot instead of just one video, but the end result were unique CGs. A similar philosophy was applied for 428. However, they adapted some of the techniques based on more modern technologies. Instead of making the actors pose and taking pictures of them, for 428 they recorded the actors performing a scene, and then they would take shots from the video and edit them for the game, with some shots being directly taken from the video footage, while some of them were recorded with a green screen and then altered in production. This allowed for more dynamic scenes, as now multiple shots can be easily gathered for fast-paced scenes. However, there was one logistical issue with this approach, and that is the fact that technically it is not legal to shoot footage in Shibuya, but they found a loophole in the legal system, as in Japan, you have to be caught in the act to be considered a crime. So, if the crew ran away before the police could get to them, technically speaking, they didn't commit a crime. So, what the team did was an old TV production trick, which consisted of having some members from the staff interfere with the police and have them questioned and arrested, while the rest of the crew runs away. That is both funny and awesome. These developers were so dedicated to this project that they were willing to risk it all. 428 counted with the participation of a real-life pop star. I have actually mentioned her before in this video, Aya Kamiki. She's a J-pop artist in real life. She has even worked in the Kamen Rider series, as she sings the opening for the series Kamen Rider Double, even showing up in 2 of the episodes of the show. And later on, she will also sing the opening for the game Kamen Rider Memory of Heroes. And her role in 428 is huge. She's not only part of Keiji's arc, but she also appears in one of the scenes of the game. And she even composed a song for the game. One more collaboration within 428 was with the company Type Moon, which are well known for series like Fate and Tsukuhime, as the writer of Tsukuhime, Kinoko Nasu, wrote a special scenario in 428 involving one of the characters in the game, Kanan. This scenario is really unique because in contrast to the rest of the game, the CGs actually use a traditional anime style, drawn by Takashi Takeuchi, who has also worked in Tsukuhime and the Fate series. And years later, Type Moon would make an anime that acts as a continuation of 428 called Kanan, which includes some returning characters from the game. Lastly, I would like to go over the future of 428, as in 2025 it was announced that a sequel is in development, called Shibuya Scramble Stories. This project does not seem to involve Spike Chunsoft, as this is a crowdfunding project. However, 428's executive producer Jiro Ishii returns for this project, and most of the original team seems to be returning as well, with many actors from the original game coming back and even getting Aya Kamiki back to compose a song for the game. According to a special livestream, the game won't come out until 2028. but there will be a special demo coming out in 2027. There's still a long way to go before this comes out. However, I'm really excited to see what they will do with this game. Let's wrap things up by answering the following question. Why should you read 428 Shibuya Scramble? 428 is one of the most unique experiences that you will find in the visual novel genre. It is a game that experiments with live action stills for its visuals, yet these CGs are filled with so much personality and attention to detail that you will be delighted by how good the presentation is. But this game is not just style over substance, the story is also one of the best ones in gaming. With an intriguing mystery that is developed through the perspective of multiple characters. From beginning to end, the story will keep surprising you, either because of its elaborate plot twists or its compelling and complex characters. Rarely you get to see a story that is so accessible but also really interesting. And the more I think about 428, the more I love this game. As 428 is a story about people, and how the action of not one but multiple individuals can change the world. You might call this series of coincidence fate, but when you think about it, life is about fate. Every decision taken by you, the people close to you, or even those that you don't even know about brought you here. Fate made me find out about this game, and it's also fate that made me talk about it. And for that reason, everyone should give this game a chance, as even if visual novels are not your cup of tea, I guarantee you that there will be something in this game that will leave an impact on you.